Welcome back to What the Gut. Today's guest is not your typical healthcare practitioner. Andrea is a former crime scene investigator, which I think is just so cool. In my other life, that's what I would do. But Andrea turned her detective skills inward and became a holistic nutrition practitioner after she was diagnosed with heart disease at just 28 years old. With no clear answers from conventional medicine, she took her health into her own hands, and what she uncovered was life-changing. Andrea Nicholson helps people reverse insulin resistance and reclaim their metabolic health naturally through her LIFER method. So in today's conversation, we're going to be diving into the connection between blood sugar, gut health, and chronic disease, and how you can begin healing from the inside out. You're listening to What the Gut, a functional medicine and holistic health podcast for busy women who are ready to take charge of their health without the overwhelm. I'm Allison, your host, a double board certified family nurse practitioner specializing in functional medicine, here to help you decode the gut hormone connection and finally get the answers that you've been searching for. In this space, we're cutting through the confusion and diving deep into holistic wellness, because feeling your best is not just about another diet or quick fix. It's about understanding your body, healing from the inside out, and making sustainable changes that fit into your real busy life. From gut health to energy struggles, hormonal imbalances to sustainable weight loss, I'm bringing you practical strategies, expert insight, and real talk that will help you thrive, not just survive. So if you're ready to finally feel good in your body again, hit that subscribe button and let's do this together. Quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and empowering purposes only, and it is not intended as medical advice. Be sure to consult with your personal healthcare provider for personal recommendations. Welcome to What the Gut, where we take control of our health one episode at a time. Andrea, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited for this conversation. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes. How did being a CSI and then into a functional space, how did that happen?
Yeah. So like you said, I was diagnosed with the early stages of heart disease in my 20s. And the conventional medical model was like, yeah, just eat a healthy diet and exercise more. And that's really all they could tell me. But they couldn't even really tell me what a heart healthy diet meant other than fiber, vegetables, and low fat. But it was like super generic, high level, not very helpful. In my 20s, I didn't know anything at that point. Even though I had a biology degree and I thought I actually knew a decent amount, I was like, all right, I'll just do what I can do. And I did my best. And went back a year later, having basically transitioned to a full plant-based diet, super low fat, all the vegetables, whole foods. This was not Doritos and Oreos. This was plants and whole grains and all the things. Went back a year later, redid the exact same cardiovascular panel, which was carotid scans and stress tests. And it was a really high level thing. This wasn't just based on cholesterol levels.
Just the extensive markers that anyone with heart disease should be getting.
Exactly. Yeah. This was much more high level where they actually did physical testing and other things in addition to the blood work. And even the blood work was way more in depth. So I went back, redid the exact same panel again 1 year later after following this heart healthy diet, exercising like 2 hours a day, intense exercise, all the things. And all the markers were worse, significantly. So the first time I went through the test, they told me my arterial age was 4 years older than my chronological age. So my arteries were roughly in my 30, 32 range. This time they were 11 years older. So not only did it not get better, it got 3 times worse.
Yeah.
And so clearly following that advice was not helpful. And I really could not think of a way to clean up my diet anymore. I was eating nothing but plants, super low fat, monitoring my calories, tracking every single bite, not having anything off the plan. And it got
everything to a T.
Yeah.
What did they say at that point?
At that point, they went, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing, but most likely you have genetics and this is just your lot in life. And eventually you'll need medications. It wasn't bad enough that they were pushing any meds at that point yet. But clearly, at now 29, my arteries were already pushing 40s. And it's like, why would I keep following the same advice that clearly isn't working? But they really couldn't tell me anything other than just prepare for it to get worse. It's just going to keep getting worse. And there's nothing.
Just like pausing on that for a second, like that is just so unfortunate. I'm really glad that they didn't push medication on you. It seems like they were trying to take the less invasive approach first and tell you to change lifestyle habits, things like that. But it's like they also didn't know what that looked like. And being trained in the conventional model as well, that's how I was originally trained. They don't teach you that kind of stuff. And so
Right.
it's like, who's the bad guy here? You know what I mean? Or is there one? But that's such a hard situation though, because I'm sure that they had the best intentions and were doing the best they could. But unfortunately, you just keep hitting a dead end with that. So you took things into your own hands. What did that look like? Did you start doing your own research or find somebody to help you?
Yeah, I basically looked at it and said, clearly what I'm doing is not the right answer. So there must be something else out there. I just didn't feel comfortable resigning myself to the fact that this was going to be my life, which would have been very easy to do because heart disease is what runs in my family. That's what everyone in my biological family died from. And I have a biology degree. I'd had some genetic training. I knew some stuff like this much back in the day. It was high school genetics, but still, even high school genetics told me that did not guarantee my fate.
Exactly.
I knew that. There are very few genetic conditions that are guarantees. Autosomal dominants are the only conditions where if you have the gene, you're going to have the disease.
Yeah.
There's very few of those, though. The vast majority are dramatically impacted by lifestyle and diet and all the things. So, like, logically, I knew that, and I just couldn't resign myself to the fact that I was just going to have to deal with dying from heart disease, and that was just my future. So that motivated me to go figure out, okay, why is this not working? And what should I be doing instead? And why did these people not know this stuff? And so that's what I ended up doing. And I listened to a lot of different experts. I read a lot of different books. I listened to podcasts. I watched a ton of videos. I went and took professional trainings and ultimately ended up in the world I'm in today, which is the functional medicine side of things, where that's exactly what they talk about. Like, why is it happening? Get to the root cause. Why did that actually happen? What's going wrong inside the body, either because of an interference, there's a toxin or a chemical or an infection or some kind of underlying imbalance or some other disease process that's accelerating that one. Get to the real cause and deal with that. And that's what I really focused on.
I love that. And I think everybody out there listening, you need to know that your genes are not your destiny. And I love that the example that you're setting, because it's like you easily could have just fallen into, my whole family has had heart issues, I'm going to too. And your providers would have let you go down that route. So you being your own advocate, looking into your health yourself, getting the knowledge for yourself and finding other people who are experts in that field, like that got you out of that mindset. And I'm sure it definitely improved your health. So I love that. That's awesome. So since you took a functional medicine approach, what is the status of your heart issues now and like those markers?
Yeah, so it took several years to collate all the information and implement the right protocols and other things. And for my personal story, it's going to be a little bit different for everybody because there are so many underlying causes that can drive these things. Figuring out what that is for you is going to be what you really need to do. For me, I had a combination of things. I had a really messed up gut, which is perfect for this conversation because that's clearly what your audience cares about.
A lot of people do, but sometimes it doesn't display
exactly
that issue. Yeah.
And I think for me and for a lot of people, you don't even realize that your gut's abnormal because that's just the only normal you've ever known. And so you don't even know. That was true for me. I had no idea that I was
years.
chronically constipated. Had no idea. That was just all I'd ever known. That was my normal.
You thought it was normal. Yeah.
Yep.
No, I was there for 3 decades.
Yep. And so I had gut imbalances for sure, which were contributing to gut infections, which were contributing to nutrient deficiencies, all of which were driving metabolic dysfunction in general. And I had the early stages of insulin resistance, which is diabetes is the #1 cause of heart disease.
Yeah.
And while I was adopted as an infant, so I don't know my full family medical history, all I know is what they died from. I have no idea if they also had diabetes. I have no idea if anyone was even looking for those things.
Yeah.
I know a couple of them were smokers, but not everybody was. So that obviously increases your risk as well. I was never a smoker. I never did any of those things that like tangible, easy things to stop doing. Easy. I know it's not easy to stop smoking. That's not what I'm saying. The obvious low-hanging
Easy when you don't. It's easy when you don't.
Exactly.
That's where we're coming from.
So yeah, for me, it was really getting to what was driving my underlying inflammation, all the dysfunctions, the nutrient deficiencies, the infections, all of those things. And once I was able to address those things, I went back. This was like 5 or 6 years later, went back and redid the testing again, the exact same panel, all the same things, same doctor, same office, same equipment, all the things. And now my arteries were younger than my chronological age. They could find no plaques. They could find no dysfunction. All the inflammation markers were good. Everything was gone.
That's awesome. Did they ask you, like, what did you do? What did they say?
Not really. Surprisingly, they were just like, oh, look at that. It's gone.
What do you know?
Yeah. What do you know? You're lucky. No, it's not about being lucky. For
Right.
sure, I have the worst genetic profile possible. It's not about luck by any means.
But I love how, like, you're telling your story now, and it took you years to heal, but it also took you years to get to where you were. So there's not a quick fix. The quick fixes don't work, but you changing your lifestyle habits and really finding the root cause and like peeling back those layers of the onion and explaining. I hope everybody listening, like, just understands the connection that like your gut and the nutrients and the digestive and absorption issues, like all of these things can play a role even in your heart. We just don't think about everything being connected. Even as a kid, we learn about the different body systems, not that they're all connected. So I love how you explained all of that. And I know you mentioned like insulin resistance too, and it's related to diabetes. Can you break down for us like how that really shows up in the body and what that looks like?
Yeah, much like gut stuff, it can show up in a wide variety of ways. Obviously, the most clear cut is when you have type 2 diabetes. That's the most obvious. You clearly have a dysfunction associated with your insulin, namely insulin resistance, that can, depending on how far into that progression you are, you may have super high levels of insulin. You may have depleted insulin because your beta cells are no longer functioning appropriately. There's a wide range of things. But even long before, decades before diabetes develops, in many cases, insulin resistance is developing behind the scenes. And it's one of those conditions, a lot like many of the gut dysfunctions, that don't necessarily show overt symptoms that you would be like, oh, something's wrong.
It's not like all of a sudden, I guess when people think of all of a sudden, like they have a heart attack, they feel something all of a sudden. All of a sudden, if like your gut's messed up, like it's not all of a sudden like that. Or if your hormones are off, like there's not ever like a switch that's just flipped and everything changes. It's a gradual progression.
Yeah. And even like a heart attack, you didn't just out of the blue have a heart attack.
Right.
There was stuff developing behind the scenes that you didn't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the same thing with insulin resistance. If you're not actively looking at lab markers and the right lab markers, most conventional markers are not going to tell you the full story. If you're not paying attention to overall what's going on in your body, is your appetite dysregulated? Is your sleep dysregulated? Are you dealing with a lot of stress? Are you all of a sudden getting really moody? Do you have brain fog? Do you have any, like, you can't remember things or you can't concentrate on things? There's a zillion different ways this can show up. And of course, there's lots of other things that can also cause these same things, which is what makes it extra complicated and why we really do need to look at appropriate testing so that you know for sure. Because what I see a lot of times in my practice is people don't just have one of these things. They have
no. Of course.
And the fix may be the same for all of them. It may address the whole picture. But we really need to identify all of those components so that we can address all of them. It may be one protocol that addresses everything. It may not be.
Right.
And it may have to come in a layered approach. So there's lots of different things, but we really have to get to that underlying problem for you.
Yes. I love how you pointed out though that just the symptoms that present for insulin resistance and so many other things, though, they can be so vague and general, and so many other things can look the same way at first. Just like somebody coming in for exhaustion. I worked in conventional medicine. Whenever I would have somebody come in for fatigue, my coworkers did not like it because I was like, I'm going to run the whole gamut. I'm going to figure this out. They fight so much against, oh, but you can't run this unless you have this code and this. But anyway, all that to say, conventional medicine just leads you so far. And for some of these generic symptoms, it is a sign that something is going on deeper in your body and you need deeper functional lab work. done, a lab review done that's very thorough to really figure that out too. And fasting insulin is actually an earlier detector of any kind of insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes than fasting glucose. But I think insurance only covers it if you are maybe a type 1 diabetic, but it's not on any kind of routine screenings. And so that's really unfortunate because we could catch so many things earlier. And I know that it's always like preventative health, do your preventative health appointment, but they're not preventing anything. So it's very odd, but
It is odd, and I agree with you. I think that's a much better marker to get, and it's not even expensive. That's
right.
the thing. You can pay cash. The panel I run, that one marker is $10.
Yeah.
It would cost you $100 going through your insurance company, most likely, depending on your insurance plan and all the things. I can get it for cash for $10.
Yeah. That's the
It's
thing. I think
silly.
a lot of functional labs, like I've had people ask, "Oh, do you take insurance?" And I explain insurance doesn't take me. They don't recognize what I do. They don't think it's important, but also they want to mark everything up so much. It's a lot cheaper in the long run to do it this way. But also, I'm not spending a ton of money on prescriptions or doctor's appointments since I found a more holistic functional approach to my own health and haven't had any illnesses or infections. It's like I haven't had to even go for any kind of appointment in years. And so it pros and cons, but pros and cons. But I know just talking about like blood sugar regulation with insulin resistance, can you talk to us a little bit about how that impacts your gut? Insulin resistance, gut health, like how do those two connect?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different ways, and it can go either way. Gut can lead to metabolic dysfunctions, and insulin resistance can make all the gut issues worse. And there's a wide range of reasons for that. Obviously, if you have a gut infection or a gut imbalance, that can lead you to overgrowths of even good bacteria, can
Yeah.
certainly set you up for the overgrowths of the bad bacteria, viruses, fungus, parasites, all the things. Those are all going to stress out your whole system.
Yeah.
It's going to distract your immune system. It's going to lead to more food sensitivities, more intolerances of various foods, which just feeds back into that stress cycle, changes the way your cells signal to each other, can change the nutrients that you can absorb. And if you don't have those nutrients, then you can't make enzymes. You can't make hormones like insulin. You don't signal things like bile. Bile is a huge component of insulin signaling and also in clearing all of these toxins.
Yeah.
So there's stressors that can come. There's nutrient deficiencies. If you don't have copper, magnesium, zinc, all of these minerals, vitamin D, all of these things play a huge role in your overall cell function, your enzyme production, your hormone production, your receptor building. If you can't absorb proteins very well, you won't have any carrier proteins. You won't have cell receptors. All of these kinds of things really do play in. And so if you have high blood sugar, that's a stressor on the system. That's inflammatory to the system. That's going to stimulate your immune system. If you have a gut infection or really any kind of infection, it doesn't even have to be in your gut. It could be a respiratory infection. That naturally raises your blood sugar, giving your immune system more energy to fight whatever you're fighting. But what if that's a toxin? There's nothing to really fight. You just need to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of these toxins are really hard to get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of gut infections also allow you to retoxify the body. So you actually remove
Cycling it.
Yeah, you just end up, instead of eliminating it in your stool or your urine, you end up reabsorbing the toxins, which then just contributes to the whole story again. So for sure, everything in the gut affects everything in the whole body. And insulin resistance is both exacerbating to the gut issues and can be caused by gut issues.
I appreciate how you explained that. It's like always nice to hear it in somebody else's terms, but I love too how you pointed out, like even our receptors won't work. And some people listening might be like, okay, like that's above my head. I don't know what you're talking about. But if you're taking any kind of medication and all of a sudden, like it's just not working as well, or you need to go get antibiotics because you have a severe infection and it's definitely like the right time and place for that, like these medications are not going to work appropriately if your cells are not healthy. And I think that's huge because I cannot imagine really needing a medication for some reason, really needing that antibiotic, being in the hospital and something just not working appropriately because my cells are just shot. So it's really so much more about the microscopic level, thinking about the real teeny tiny roots of everything and just peeling back those layers of the onion. Yeah. What are some early signs of metabolic dysfunction that a lot of times just get ignored or misdiagnosed?
Yeah, I think the most obvious thing and the one that most of people are working on is weight loss or weight gain. They
Mhm.
notice weight gain that like comes out of nowhere, or maybe they've always yo-yoed up and down and now all of a sudden it's like it only goes up or it stays put and it will not go back down no matter what they do. All the
Yeah.
things they used to don't no longer work, or they just for whatever reason can't do those things anymore. That's the most obvious one that creeps up that a lot of people just blame on poor eating, poor lifestyle, those kinds of things. And that certainly can be the
Postpartum.
problem.
Yeah, yeah, and I think too a lot, like, postpartum, moms like, "Oh, I just had a baby," but pregnancy can be a trigger to your body. It's a great thing, but it can be a stressor on your body, and so that alone triggers some of these things. You shouldn't be exhausted and not able to lose weight and have all these
Yeah.
problems after you have kids, even
Yeah.
if society deems it like that sometimes.
And same thing when it comes to menopause or any significant life change can absolutely trigger those same things. Any life stressor can do the same thing. If you lose a loved one, if you get in a traumatic car accident, if you lose your job, lose your house, go through a wildfire, like whatever that looks like,
Yeah,
any major life stressor can also be that exacerbating cause from the very get-go. And then things just snowball from there. So yeah, there's a lot of those kinds of things that get overlooked or get dismissed as, well, you're just not following your diet. You're just eating too much. You're not exercising enough. And that certainly can be the case. There's plenty of people out there who live on fast food and don't ever exercise or do much other than sit around and
yeah,
those kinds of the non-activity type of lifestyle. That absolutely can be the case. So if that's the case, that's where I would start.
yeah.
But if you're already doing all the things, you're eating a great diet, you're not overeating, you're not undereating, you're getting all of your nutrients, you're eating whole foods,
You're
you're
tracking all the
exercising,
things. Yeah,
yeah,
like you
you're
were doing.
exercising appropriately, not overtraining, but also not sedentary, figuring out that sweet spot for you. If you truly are doing all the things, you're sleeping well, you're managing your stress, you're doing things you love to do every day that bring you joy, that make you happy. If you're doing all those things and things just won't move, there's something else driving it. So
Exactly.
definitely always pay attention to those things. If you feel like you're eating a fantastic diet, but your appetite, like you're always hungry, or you have to force yourself to eat because you're never hungry, those are signs that often get overlooked.
Mhm.
Chronic infections. If you're
Yeah.
like, I catch every freaking cold that goes around, or I barely get over one and then something else happens and I get UTIs or I get yeast infections or I get respiratory infections. If you're one of those people that's constantly getting sick, there's a reason. There's
Yeah,
something going on with your gut, with your metabolism, with your thyroid, with whatever that looks like. We got to figure that out. You shouldn't be getting sick frequently. You should be healthy enough to survive at least some of the going around infections
right.
without necessarily needing medications all the time or needing to sleep for a week or whatever that looks like. You should be able to not get sick every single time something's going around.
Yeah.
I think fatigue is another big one that a
Mhm.
lot of people just brush off as life, stress, I'm too busy, I'm not sleeping well, and it just gets dismissed, but it can be a really big one. There's
Yeah.
been numerous studies that have shown even one night of disrupted sleep can throw off your insulin signaling for days.
Oh,
That
yeah.
might be the worst sleep disruption you have, and the longer that goes, the worse it is and the harder it is to overcome those things. So fatigue is a big one for a lot of different reasons, but I think just as a society, we're so busy badge people and we
Yeah.
love talking about how busy we are and always filling our plates with things that we overlook the fact that could actually be a real dysfunction happening, and it's not just that you're that busy.
Exactly. Now, can you walk us through your LIFER method and how it supports long-term metabolic health?
Yeah, so LIFER is an acronym. So just highlighting some of the things that we would focus on to address insulin resistance, metabolic dysfunction, whatever that looks like. So the first part is the L, which is for liver. We have to have a functioning good liver system. And of course, with that goes the whole gut. We need good detoxification. Our liver is responsible for nutrient absorption. It creates a lot of nutrients. It detoxifies the body. It has so many roles in the body. And without a good, healthy liver that's not full of fat, that's not full of toxins, that's not dysfunctional, then insulin can work that much better. So we really do have to have the liver functioning well to begin with. And of course, that includes the rest of the gut in that same process. The second part, the I, is insulin. Of course, we want to bring down those insulin levels and get insulin working as well as possible. Even if you have something like type 1 diabetes, where you're not making any insulin or not nearly enough to survive on, there's still a lot we can do to optimize your body to use insulin better so that you need to take less insulin and
Yeah.
take less medications. But certainly for everyone who is making insulin, the vast majority of people are making too much. And then
Yeah.
the body's not listening to that, so it makes even more and it screams at all the cells. And so we
Right.
need to bring those levels down and get that whole process working better. The F is for function. So not only do we want to be able to have a functional body and functional insulin system and metabolism, but we want to be able to function in life. We want our
Yeah.
brains working and our bodies working and maintain physical strength and ability to keep living the way we want to live. So that's overall function in your body, strength, brain health, all the things. And then E is for elimination. That kind of goes back to the gut. So part of it is the physical elimination. We want to be able to get rid of waste products. And, that back end of metabolic function is the waste piece. Even normal, healthy metabolic function has waste products that we need to be able to get rid of. And then, of
Right.
course, we have lots of toxins in our environment and that kind of thing as well. But it also relates to eliminating the things in your life that are making it hard.
Yeah.
That
And
might
then
be relationships.
enjoy. Yes. That are just toxic for your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. It could be relationships. It could be places that you frequent that make things so much harder. Why do you
Mhm.
hang out at the bakery if you know you shouldn't be eating those things? Why do you
Yes.
hang out at the coffee shop if you always get the 60-gram sugar frappuccino or whatever that is? So we need to really look at your overall life. Where are you doing things that are making your journey harder? How can
Yeah.
we eliminate those things? And how can we rebuild your overall system, your
Mhm.
overall life system to support your goals and make it
Yeah.
easy, effortless, and happy and joyful? And then the last piece is the rest and recovery. So we really do need not only great quality sleep and adequate amounts of sleep, but we also need to just give our nervous systems a break.
Yeah.
Need to chill out and not be so busy badge focused
Sit
and not be
sit
so
down. Yeah.
not be so device focused and not be so stimulated with all these things all the time. We need to properly rest and recover and just rejuvenate our systems. And so these are the things we focus on in the system to make sure that it's not just about, did you eat enough broccoli today? It's just not that simple. There's all of these moving parts in our overall lives are contributing. And so we need to be able to focus on all of the aspects.
Yeah. I love that. I love all of that, the holistic approach, everything that focuses on. That's awesome. Now, I want to ask you this too, Andrea. Do you still work at all as a crime scene investigator?
I don't. Nope. I have completely left that life and I'm full time in the holistic health space now.
Okay, so when did you transition? Like, where in your health journey were you whenever you were like, okay, I'm switching careers completely?
It was after I had gone through my own journey, had reversed the heart disease, had done all of those things, had addressed the gut health. It was at the tail end of my personal journey. Then I transitioned away and wanted to know so much more. It just really piqued my interest in all the things. And so I ended up going back to school and left that career.
Yeah, I love that. So many people that I meet that are in this space now, like we all have similar stories where our life was going one direction. We were like had a totally different career and then just completely switched. And because we had our own struggles, like we had our own issues with our health that led us to this. And so it's great because I think there's so many people out there who are holistic providers who just we're more compassionate because we can help people and we've been there. So it's just always nice to meet other people doing the same thing who have been through something.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of us in this field now, but there's still so many more needed. But we're going to resonate with different people based on what they went through.
Exactly.
And so I think if you haven't found that person who understands you, who gets you, who speaks your language, who understands your problem, keep looking. There's somebody out there who has a very similar story to you, whether it's their own personal story or their spouse or their parent, or they've just served hundreds of clients with that same problem. There's somebody out there who gets you. Keep looking, keep asking, find someone who really gets you, and it'll be so much easier.
Yeah. I love that you pointed that out. Now, Andrea, we can find you at Andrea K. Nicholson on Instagram, and then your website is healthylifewithandrea.com. So if anybody listening wants to check her out, I will be able to drop those links in the show notes. Go give Andrea a follow and say hello and let her know that you enjoyed this episode. Andrea, is there anything else that you want to leave with our listeners today?
I think I'll just add a little bit more to that last statement. If you are still struggling and you just haven't been able to get the answers yet, keep looking, keep asking questions, advocate for yourself. That may require that you pay for some things out of pocket. I know that's hard for a lot of people, but if you only rely on your insurance model, you're probably only going to continue to get the same answers you've already gotten and the same solutions that may or may not actually be solving your issue. Most likely they're not. So if that's you, just be willing to invest a little time, money, whatever that looks like, to find your answers. Be your own best advocate. Don't settle because some doctor told you XYZ. If you don't like that answer, if that's not empowering to you, if it's not helping you, find someone who will.
Yes, I couldn't say it better. Thank you so much for being here today, Andrea. This was awesome.
It was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
That's a wrap on today's episode of What the Gut. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I hope you're walking away with insights that bring you closer to feeling your absolute best. If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would take a moment to leave a review. It helps more people like you find this podcast and get the answers that they need. And don't forget to hit that subscribe so that you never miss a new episode. Let's keep the conversation going over on Instagram. Find me at Allison Gets Well for daily gut health tips, behind the scenes, and more ways to support your wellness journey. I would also love to hear what topics you want covered in future episodes. If you have a burning question or a guest that you'd love to hear from, shoot me an email at hello@allisongetswell.com. If you're ready for real personalized support on your health journey, check out my one-on-one coaching program at allisongetswell.com. Let's get you feeling amazing from the inside out. Until next time, stay curious, nourish your body, and take care of your gut. Catch you soon.